A fellow atheist left some really challenging comments under my video about my deconversion from Christianity. I've taken a long time thinking about him, and I am just now responding. Thank you, Tulthor, for writing. It's easy for you to speak about atheism when living in a Western country. This is the comment that caught me by the throat and spun my head around for weeks. It is easy for me to talk about being an atheist living in a Western country. True, I live in Texas, and as my video about stereotypes shows, just about one of the worst labels that can be applied to me is atheist. Most of my family would not understand. If they found out, I might lose the ability to hang out with some of my younger family members. My parents would have the option to kick me out of my temporary lodgings. My boss, if she found out about my videos, might feel that I should take them off the internet, as that would be a conflict of interest with the science that I try to spread. The youth groups for which I volunteer, the leaders might ask me not to come back, and even the kids might choose not to associate with me anymore. Really, I don't know what all of the repercussions could be. These are my fears, living in a religiously conservative area of a Western country. Despite my fears, living in Texas is nothing like living in a theocracy. Not yet, anyway. It's not like communities in the Western United States, in which I'd be socially and economically ostracized for not being a fundamentalist Mormon. It's not like living in a country where I'd be blacklisted for leaving a religion, or a country under the rules of the Quran in which I could be killed for becoming an infidel. Europe used to be so dangerous. Think of Giordano Bruno and Galileo. And America was too. Think of the Salem witch trials. But these countries have gone through an enlightenment. So have the religions in question. I hope in my small way to help other countries and other religions go through an enlightenment. The human species will not be free until anyone, anywhere can say whatever they believe without fear of a terrible reaction simply because it is a different belief. I still think beliefs should be evaluated, and certain beliefs should be considered worse than others based on how they affect believers and those around the believers. We should ask, how does a certain belief affect children? How does it affect the community? How does it affect human rights? For example, someone with a belief that all people with red hair should be eviscerated should probably be locked away and given psychological help. We must evaluate beliefs based on their effects, and not just on how logical or likely they are. Tulthor, I've done research on Romania since communicating with you. You had talked about religion, but it seems like regardless of all the different religions that have had influence on Romania, Romania has had some very tough times to struggle through. Obviously, I have no real grasp of what it would be like to live there and to be struggling away from faith, as you seem to have done. I don't know what it's like to live in what you described as a dystopian society. I even had to look up the word dystopian. Among other insights, you've shown me that as tough as I find it to be an atheist in Texas, I have so much to be grateful for. I have freedom, and I have community. And as I often say, an attitude of gratitude, that's the key to a happy life. So thank you for helping stir gratitude in me. You pointed out that it's easier for me to be an atheist and to talk about it when living in a Western country. And that makes me wonder if atheism is actually on the rise here. It certainly has more publicity, and we can thank people like Dawkins, Harris, Dennett, and Hitchens for that. And the people who try to counter what they're saying. When I was a Christian, rising atheism would have sounded sad to me. Not scary, as some Fox News commentators would like us to think. Fox seems to love making atheists sound unreasonable, evil, unpatriotic, or worse, socialist. As a Christian, I wouldn't have thought the rise of atheism was going to mean the end of our civilization. I knew even then that atheists were just like any other person, they just had a different set of beliefs. Actually, now I see it more as they've come to different conclusions looking at the evidence with possibly different standards of evidence. That's my situation. What would have saddened me as a Christian about hearing that atheism was on the rise is that I would have thought it's so sad that people don't get to know a loving God the way that I do. I'd still commiserate with theists who felt that same way. The fear is just that the general level of happiness and wholeness would be dwindling as God belief dwindled, and anyone who cares about other humans wants them to be happy. Now I see atheism rising as the potential for humanism, and thus wholeness and happiness to be on the rise. True, humanitarian values can fit nicely with religion or with secularism, but it seems to me that once people aren't handed fast food versions of life philosophies and values over a lectern, they'll be more able to think clearly for themselves. They'll be forced to do so, to evaluate their own beliefs and their actions, and to adopt beliefs and actions which will be more conducive to their living a better life, and that will help everybody live better lives. Of course, people need help to see objectively. We are not by our nature objective. Our opinions are very subjective. We can't fling people, or certainly not entire countries of people, into free thought who've never had the opportunity to think for themselves. People need help not to fall into the same habits that our species has been falling into ever since societies blossomed, like blindly obeying charismatic leaders, or yearning for the ease of following black and white rules instead of applying a dynamic moral rubric. Training in the scientific method and lots of education about the humanities can help people blossom into free thought. It also helps when people aren't destitute and starving. To raise humanitarian values, we have to raise the standard of living for people all over the world. To me, helping humanitarianism to rise, educating people and teaching them critical thinking skills, weakening the authority of religious institutions, and creating more open societies are all more important than the spread of atheism. But I don't think it's a coincidence that those trends coincide with the rise of atheism in many Western countries, like the UK. And I'd like to think that I'm seeing and helping that trend here. Happy belated Earth Day, everybody. Go outside. They give them publicity too. Dawkins, Harris, Dennett, and Hitchens. Why is that so hard to remember? Theists who felt that same way. We can't throw people, and certainly not entire countries of people, just fling them into 30 thought.